She did not ask for proof. She did not ask him to show her the wounds in his hands. She did not demand a sign. He said her name, and she knew. That is what 3 years of following someone does. You know their voice, not their appearance, not their credentials, not their theology. Their voice. And here is something the Gospel of John records very carefully: Mary Magdalene had been at the cross. She had seen him die. She had watched the soldiers confirm it. She had watched him be taken down and buried. She had come back to anoint a dead body. Her expectation was a corpse. Her preparation was spices for burial. Her plan was grief. Then came one word, her name, spoken by a voice she knew from a man she thought was dead. The shift that happened in that garden, in that single word, became the pivot point of all human history. Because if that moment is real, everything changes. Not just for Mary Magdalene, but for everyone. Then Jesus said something that should have been impossible in the world they lived in: "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Go. That one word carried enormous significance. In a culture where a woman's testimony was not admissible in a court of law, where women were not counted in the number of a synagogue, and where a woman's word was often considered worth less than a man's, Jesus said, "Go." He did not say, "Wait here while I find someone more credible." He did not say, "Let me appear to Peter first so the disciples will believe it." He did not say, "Your testimony will not be accepted, I will send someone else." He said, "Go." To her. The early church gave her a title, Apostola Apostolorum, the apostle to the apostles. Think about what that means. The word apostle means, one who is sent. Mary Magdalene was sent to the ones who would be sent. She became the first link in the chain of testimony that would stretch across 2,000 years to every person who has ever heard that the tomb was empty. Every sermon, every church, every conversion, and every moment of faith traces back through a chain of witnesses that begins with a woman weeping outside a tomb, hearing her name, and running. And she ran. The Gospel of John says, Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." 4 words. The most consequential 4 words in history. Not, "I think he might be alive." Not, "There was someone at the tomb." Not, "The body is missing." But, "I have seen the Lord." She spoke with the certainty of someone who had heard her own name spoken in a voice she would recognize anywhere. Now step back for a moment and look at what God did here. The resurrection, the single most important event in human history, was announced first not in the temple, not to the high priest, not to the Roman governor, not to the Sanhedrin, and not to the crowds who had demanded his crucifixion. It was announced in a garden to a woman who had once had 7 demons cast out of her, a woman with no social standing, no legal voice, and no credentials the world would recognize. What she did have was presence. She was there when the crowds had gone, when the disciples had scattered, when Peter had denied him, and when John watched from a distance. Mary Magdalene was at the cross. When the Sabbath ended and the sun had barely risen, Mary Magdalene was at the tomb. When Peter and John looked inside, believed, and went home, Mary Magdalene stayed. And here is the word this entire story has been building toward: presence. Not perfection. Not performance. Not platform. Not credentials. Not theological training. Not social standing. Presence. She showed up. She stayed. She came back. She refused to leave without knowing where he was. And the risen Jesus revealed himself to the one who would not leave. He said her name. Not because she had earned it. Not because she deserved it more than Peter. Not because she was theologically superior. He spoke her name because she was there. This is what the story of Mary Magdalene is really saying to every person who feels overlooked, to every person whose testimony the world has decided does not count, to every person who stayed when they had every reason to leave, and to every person weeping outside what feels like an empty tomb: not realizing that the one they are mourning is already standing right behind them. He knows your name. The same voice that spoke galaxies into existence, the same voice that said, "Let there be light," knows your name and speaks it the way he spoke hers, not as a title, not as a category, not as a demographic, but as a person. As the specific, irreplaceable individual that only you can be. Mary. One word. And everything changed.